Hello there. It's Sunday. It's a beautiful day outside. There's a slight breeze, a little bit of sun, and it's slightly cool, at least a little cool for California. And this is the 18th episode of the VictorPrep Vocab podcast. As always, this is Sam, your host. And before we get started, I just wanted to say it would be really, really cool if you like the podcast and you enjoy it. If you add a review to the iTunes podcast page, I'm not going to beg for reviews or anything like that. It's just, I want as many people to listen and learn from the podcast as possible so that it may encourage people who are on the fence about trying a podcast if they see good reviews. So if you do actually enjoy the podcast and you feel like it's useful, please do feel free to put a review on iTunes, but it's not a big deal. Thank you so much, and let's get started by reviewing the words from episode 17. Those were ingratiate, euphony, polyglot, and lachrymose. Ingratiate, that means to bring oneself into favor with someone by trying to do something to please them, trying to do something to flatter them, or maybe even give them a gift. Euphony. Euphony means the quality of being pleasant to the ear, pleasing sounds, beautiful music, or poetry where the words are carefully chosen to provide a nice sound. Polyglot. Polyglot means a person who knows or uses several languages. Lachrymose. Lachrymose means tearful, crying. If someone is lachrymose, they're usually very sad and they're weeping. Now let's get started on our new words. Our first word is larceny. Larceny. That is spelled L-A-R, ceny, that's C-E-N-Y, larceny. This is a noun, and it means, basically, to steal. Means the wrongful taking and carrying away of personal goods belonging to someone else. Some synonyms are burglary, misappropriation, robbery, crime, thieving, stealing, pilfering. It's quite a simple word. I think, I don't know for sure, but larceny is used more in legal terms. It's more of a technical word. So if you're in court and someone is being accused of this crime, I think it will often be referred to as larceny, rather than saying burglary or robbery or something like that. Our second word is obdurate. Obdurate. That is spelled O-B, durate, D-U-R-A-T-E, obdurate. It's an adjective, and it actually means something very similar to one of our previous words, which is obstinate. Now, if you remember obstinate from our previous podcast, you will also basically know what obdurate means, because obdurate means stubbornly resisting persuasion. So someone might be trying to encourage you to do something, and you don't care at all. You are unmoved. You are not affected by whatever is being said to you. Some synonyms are stubborn, obstinate, intransigent, inflexible, unyielding, bullheaded, mulish, stiff-necked. Often the meaning of obdurate relates directly to moral influence. So someone might be trying to push your behavior in a more moral way. So if they believe you are doing something immoral, they are trying to persuade you to stop doing whatever it is they consider to be sinful. So if you're trying to remember what obdurate means, how can we break it down? Well, first of all, it begins with ob. Now, ob, O-B, comes from Latin, And it often means in opposition. It can also mean movement towards or against. So you can think of other words like obstruction, obstinate. And the second half of obdurate, the durate part, you could think of the word durable. Durable meaning it's long-lasting, it's tough, it's hard. So, ob meaning in opposition, you could think obstruction or obstinate. And durate meaning harden, durable. Those two things put together, you might say something that is in opposition and it's hard and it's durable, that's not movable. If you imagine a brick wall, that's in opposition to you moving, and it's also hard and durable. So you might be able to use those two parts, especially the durate, durable part, to remind you what obdurate means. If someone is behaving like they're a brick wall, and you can't get them to do what you want to do or change their behavior by persuasion or pity, however you try to persuade them they won't move, they are a brick wall. They are being obdurate. Our third word is panegyric. Panegyric. That is spelled P-A-N, pan. Egyric is E-G-Y-R-I-C. Panegyric. It's a little tricky, this one. It's a noun, and it means a public speech or a published piece of writing in praise of something or someone. If you know the word eulogy, this is very, very, very similar. Almost the same thing, almost the same meaning. A eulogy, and you'll note that it starts with the EU, which I've mentioned before. EU signifies something good, so eulogy, that's a positive praise of someone or something. So panegyric, very similar to a eulogy, a speech of praise. Some synonyms are an accolade or tribute. The actual word itself, it's a Greek word, and it comes from pan, that means all. So think pandemic, panoply, pan meaning all, and the egyric part, the original root comes from agora, which is a Greek word, and every town or city in ancient Greece had some sort of central meeting spot where people would meet and discuss and talk and so on and just hang out, basically. And that was an agora, which was a meeting spot in ancient Greece. And the original meaning, I suppose, of the word panegyric did mean, I suppose, someone going to some meeting spot and doing a public speech. Our modern meaning is more, in general, a public speech or published piece of writing that is praising something. So if you think, usually at the big award ceremonies, there's usually a panegyric. So at the Oscars, often if someone gets a Lifetime Achievement Award, someone will give a speech about the person who won that award. And it will be a long speech about their life, how great that person was, all the good things they did. That is a panegyric. Our final word is Rococo. Rococo. That is spelled R-O-C, rock, oco, O-C-O. So it's Rococo. It's an adjective. This word is 99% of the time going to be referring to a style of architecture or furniture. And this is a certain style. Apparently it was most common in the 18th century in Europe. And it was a style where everything was very elaborately decorated. So if you imagine a chair, and that's an ordinary square-legged chair with no fancy colours or no frills, that is not Rococo. But then imagine some chair that was carven very ornately with tiny little details of flowers on it, and it had a frilly piece of cloth that was the seat part of the chair with little tassels hanging off. If it was excessively decorated that way, it could probably be described as Rococo. Often Rococo furniture or architecture had elaborate motifs and scroll work. So Rococo is a style of art, of decoration and architecture. Some people would say it looked rather superficially elegant. It was almost a bit too much. Some synonyms are ornate or florid, extravagant, flamboyant, elaborate, convoluted, over-decorated. Some people even consider the Rococo style to be grotesque. It's too much. Of course, like all styles of art, it's very subjective. So some people may like Rococo architecture. Another good synonym is Baroque, which also refers to a style of music that's very ornate and elaborate. Those were our 4 words. Now, as always, we will do our test sentences. My parents tried and tried to get me to quit smoking cigarettes, but I ignored their protests and carried on regardless. Usually, when a famous actor gets a Lifetime Achievement Award, there is a lengthy speech extolling their virtues and singing their praises. Burglar Bill made a living out of robbing the rich and giving to himself. He had thought about giving to the poor, but found himself far more needy. I tend to dislike overly ornate decorations and furniture. I prefer a more understated and modest style. Those were our words and test sentences for today. Please don't forget to do your example sentences. Don't forget to practice a little, to re-listen to any podcasts if you need a refresher. We have a test episode coming up in 2 episodes' time, so that will be a good time to test yourself. Again, like I mentioned at the start of the podcast, if you do have time, and if you want to, please leave a review on the iTunes page for this podcast, if you use iTunes even. And as always, please email me any feedback you have, positive or negative, it's all very important, to sam.fold@gmail.com. I hope you're all having an amazing weekend. See you next time. Bye-bye.